We are live. What is up, swimmers and swammers? Welcome back to another episode of the SwimSwam Breakdown. Uh, as always, I'm your host, Coleman Hodges, joining you from Brooklyn, New York. We've got my fellow New Yorker, Sophie Kaufman, with us today, as well as the Dirty Double himself, Brendan Burns, coming to us from outside of Philadelphia. And this is a true breakdown. We've been doing a lot of conference championship previews. We've been talking a lot about college swimming. So for some of you international folks, this may provide a breath of fresh air because we are talking about long course swimming today. And we saw a lot of it this weekend. I feel like for whatever reason, this may have been the unofficial season opener for the long course season. We saw some really fast swimming worldwide in Britain, Australia, Estonia, Japan, Dubai, and Florida. So we are going to get into all of that, but we can't leave our roots behind. We are starting with short course swimming with the ACC Championships because Friday we had some big news. Greg Meehan announced that his NCAA qualifiers for the Stanford women would be leaving the ACC Championships after the Friday morning prelim session. I had an entire discussion with him about this on Friday. You can go watch that. You can go read our article. You can go leave one of 300 plus comments and join that wild and bizarre fray. But this is something that I don't feel like we've seen in the past, or at least not specifically something like this. So I am curious what you all think about this. And I think what many were initially upset about when they saw this news, is this a bad look for Stanford? And is this a bad look for the ACC? Is this a bad look for swimming to leave a conference championships early like this? Sophie, I'm going to toss this one to you first.
I don't know if I would go so far as to say that it's a bad look necessarily. I think it's not great from, we've been talking all season about the reinvesting in making dual meet season fun and feel important. And this feels like it does take the wind out of the sails a little bit, and it's kind of swinging back into the mindset of like, oh, it's only NCAAs that matters and nothing that happens before then is important. That said, the move makes a ton of sense for them. And I think that it's something that we're going to have to get used to seeing in this new world of conference realignment, especially in the ACC. I think the Greensboro is hosting I think 5 of the next 6 ACC championships. So we're gonna, I think, see this more and more from the teams that have to travel so far. Especially because in our current world of NCAA swimming, it is NCAAs that matters the most. And in order to prepare best for that meet, it does make sense for the swimmers who are already qualified to adopt this strategy, even if it does mean that, we miss out on fast swimming and it kind of takes the wind out of the sails on the team standings race perspective.
When you say 5 of the 6 next ACC championships, are you referring to sports generally or swimming specifically?
Oh, sorry, swimming specifically.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. That's what I thought you meant, but yeah. So ACC's gonna be there a lot, which, yeah, Greensboro. All right, Brendan. How about you? What do you think about this matter?
As someone that was just in college swimming, I think it's been a long time coming that something like this would happen, especially like Sophie mentioned, keeping the relevance of dual meets important, but also the long-standing swimming tradition of oh, nothing matters until NCAAs. So it was kind of a matter of time before it would come to a head and we'd have to have a situation like this. I like to preface that I really do like Greg Meehan. He's a Philadelphia guy. I think he's one of the nicest and most successful coaches in this sport. But I think in this situation, it's a difficult one because his reasoning makes sense, but also it just is I think a bad precedent to set, and it looks kind of bad. I think on a spectrum of the traditional approach of we're just going to send everyone to conference, okay, you're an NCAA qualifier. We're not going to rest you because we just want to see how you do. We want you to score points for our team versus a Dave Durden approach where we're not going to send you at all. We're going to sit you at home or send you to a tier pro series meet. and we're just going to focus on NCAAs. He kind of chose something in the middle where I just don't really know the benefit of you're still going all the way back over to Greensboro, and you still have to go all the way back. If he had done something where he's like, I'm just going to leave Torrey Husk and all of our best NCAA qualifiers at home, I think it would have gotten a little bit less heat than the kind of the half in, half out approach that he's currently taking.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting, that's what makes this so interesting, right? Is that we've seen someone like Dave Durden leave his best swimmers from home from conference completely. And to me, that this approach is more understandable, or maybe, I don't know if forgivable is the right word, but like Greg said, we being in the ACC, we appreciate being in the ACC, and we want to respect that it as a conference and this is a championships, but we're also still going to do what's best for us. So we're going to go compete. We're going to go take advantage of this situation and race at a high level. But by leaving, by leaving 3 sessions early, he feels that his athletes get reacclimated to, 3 different time zones in time, so that once Monday rolls around, they are readjusted to Pacific time, have had a weekend to kind of chill out, flush the meat out, and then they can get right back into training to best prepare themselves for what will be NCAAs in 4 weeks. And so I do get the perspective of, okay, I'm going to leave my best swimmers at home, and that way maybe I can send other swimmers who might not be racing at conference at all or might not get that chance. I don't really know specifically what the Stanford women's situation is with that, because I'm pretty sure their roster tends to be on the smaller side anyway. But yeah, it's an interesting situation. And it's also, he brought up the point that, again, Stanford is concerned with the Director's Cup, which only takes into account NCAA results. And as that's what the athletic director is concerned with, who is Greg's boss. And so, if he's if they're telling Greg, we care about NCAAs, ACCs, not as much, then, that's going to affect his decision-making. But also the Stanford women's soccer team did not even qualify for the ACC conference championships, because I guess only 6 teams do. In part, they were so tired at the end of the season that they lost a few close games because they were traveling so much within the ACC. Then they rest a bit. They get invited to the NCAA tournament. They end up making a run there and qualifying for the Final Four, which ironically was them and 3 other ACC teams. But that, I feel like that made a good point, and perhaps, maybe even did set a precedent of, okay, what happens if we don't go full bore for this conference championships? Yeah. Any more thoughts, any rebuttals to that, perhaps, on this situation? Because certainly our commenters had a lot of thoughts.
Another point I wanted to bring up, maybe hadn't been discussed. We're talking about rest and recovery and being home with 4 weeks for NCAAs. And again, I understand Greg's reasoning. I really don't want to harp on him too much for this. It's honestly a bad reflection of the sport if we have a coach that makes a kind of a controversial decision like this, but most people are able to reason with it and be like, actually, this kind of makes sense. I do want to say that I just don't know how I feel. There's 4 weeks in between ACCs and NCAAs versus Pac-12s. There's traditionally 3 weeks, I believe. And as someone who has done 3 weeks versus 4 weeks between NCAAs and conference, there's a huge difference between having that extra week, and that I would say is kind of a strike against the move, because I feel like 4 weeks is enough time where you could kind of just stay out there for the full meet and still have enough time to recover. If it was 3 weeks, I would definitely be leaning more towards, actually, this is kind of a smart idea, and I think this is a good idea. But with 4 weeks, I don't know. It's really difficult.
Yeah. I think Coleman, what you're saying too about like Stanford's decision, or at least like the Stanford athletics department's concerns with their results for the end of the season is a really interesting one, especially when you kind of consider this move in the context of like everything that's happening in the NCAA this year. The college landscape is shifting wildly and really trying to figure out, what balance are we between professional athletes and college and student athletes, and how these moves all kind of come in context with that landscape. And so I think that it's something to think about as well. And not only this decision, but the precedent that it's going to set going forward. The ACC championships are already scheduled, right? They have locations, but is this a move that we're going to keep seeing from other teams, as these conference championships move around? If they go to the West Coast one time, are we going to see this from the East Coast teams? Is this going to spread to the other Power Four conferences as well, as things shift towards, I guess, a more professional NCAA?
Yeah. And I mean, Brendan, you brought this point up earlier a little bit, but we've discussed so much growing the popularity of the sport, swimming faster in season, putting a bigger emphasis on dual meets or on in-season meets. And I think just naturally that's going to dilute a conference championships, because we used to see like the regular season suck, like no one swam fast. We honestly didn't really have too much of an idea of what we might see at a conference championships. And then, as you mentioned, Brendan, people would go all in for this conference championships, and then we would see a lot of fast swimming. And so now you have teams swimming fast all season going back to September, where they're putting up really, really significant times every single month. And then, a conference championships, even if you're swimming faster than you have all season at that meet, I feel like emotionally, or just like what you're focusing on, you're not going to be putting as much into this conference championships, because you've already put so much into a dual meet where you were trying to break the attendance record, or a mid-season meet where you're trying to get your NCAA cuts, or whatever the thing might be. But there's so many other tick points or check marks along the way now that I feel like, as you said, this was kind of inevitable. Like, we were going to see something like this happen, but I feel like this is more of a real-time consequence or personification of this of this whole season mattering more versus just a conference championships and then NCAA championships. Like, you can't have it both ways in my mind. That doesn't mean that conference championships aren't still great. It doesn't mean they're not going to be faster, and it doesn't mean they don't matter. But I think it does mean that some teams are going to approach them a little bit differently, because they've already accomplished so much throughout this season, or used what traditionally they may have used a conference championships for. They did that at their last home dual meet, or at their mid-season meet, or at some random meet in October.
I agree with you. And we see it in a few other sports, honestly, specifically basketball, where in the regular season, focusing on getting quad one wins to secure your tournament resume for the NCAA tournament, much more important than winning a Big Ten, SEC, ACC, Big East tournament. So those tournaments for the conference are very cool. They're great to go watch, good basketball, but ultimately it's more important to get those regular season wins versus trying to save your season by getting the conference tournament wins to try and get into the NCAA tournament. So in a swimming sense, if you're going fast in a dual meet, yeah, there isn't like a huge reason to go fast at a conference tournament other than trying to win. But, unless your athletic director is putting pressure on you, there isn't a whole lot of motivation other than intrinsic motivation to try and win.
And that's like what that was my biggest problem with some of our commenters, or that's just why I really encourage having a dialogue about it, right? Because it's like, if you lay things out, like people were complaining about this, I think just because it's like, well, you have this gut reaction of like, it's the conference championships. Like, you have to care about this because it's a big deal. But then, and I agree to an extent, but then you like break down the reasons, you break down the whys. It's like, okay, you have to look at all the variables, like just talk about it and like lay things out and or maybe ask yourself as a fan, why does the conference championships matter? Or like, how are these athletes approaching it? Because yeah, I think it can go either way. Like, again, when I was first made aware of this news, my gut reaction was like, oh, that's not good. But but then I had a conversation with Greg about it, and at the end of it, I was like, I understand why he's doing this completely.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, as a former college swimmer, the biggest reason I wanted to do well at conference championships was to just try and win the meet. It wasn't like, oh, I need to salvage the season or whatever. Texas never cared about their conference championship for 40 years. This is the first year they're really going to have to care, just because they want to beat the other teams in the SEC and have bragging rights. But ultimately, I mean, for the past 40 years, they've just been tuning it up for NCAAs, and it's worked out well for them.
Mm-hmm. And like, essentially, to me, that's what this is for the Stanford women, right? Like, they're going to get high level competition. I think I would have a bigger problem with it. And not to Stanford has a great team. They have a great shot at getting top 3 NCAAs this year, but like, they have one Olympic champion and she will be swimming 2 finals events at this meet. Like, as a fan, or like, also people were like, well, why am I supposed to care about the conference championships now if Stanford's leaving a day and a half early? Like, okay, it's going to be a really, really good meet regardless of the Stanford women. Like, even if they weren't there, period, it would be an insanely good meet to watch as a fan. But like, if I'm trying to draw people from outside the sport to like watch the ACC championships, which I probably won't anyway, like, there's going to be an Olympic champion swimming 2 of her best events, like, it's still pretty good in terms of getting eyeballs on the TV or trying to draw people in. So that's like, if Tori was going to go and swim like a relay, I'd have a bigger problem with it, but again, as like someone who's thinking outside of swimming, or if you're just looking at it from that perspective, like, she's going to miss one race. That's fine to me. They're not going to win the meet anyway, even if they stayed the whole time. I also enjoyed when other people were like, oh, they're probably just scared of Stanford and they don't want to actually swim the whole meet so that they would have to see how much Virginia beat them by. Sorry, they're probably scared of Virginia. Stanford's probably scared of Virginia. I thought that was a comical perspective. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that in the comments this week. I mean, there was about that, and then also with Summer and Katie at Florida Nationals.
Yeah. Our commenters are funny. But on that note, let's talk about these Southern Florida sectionals, because we did get to see both Katie Ledecky and Summer McIntosh and Bobby Fink and a handful of other great swimmers compete at this local Florida meet. Sophie, I'll start with you. You just brought it up. Favorite swim that you saw this weekend from an Olympian or a non-Olympian?
It's probably the easy answer, but I am going to go with Summer McIntosh's 800 free. That was just so exciting. Even though she wasn't racing Katie Ledecky head to head like they did at this meet last year, to see another woman finally get under that 810 barrier was incredible. And it's both, reinforces how dominant Ledecky has been in this event for so long, and adds another layer of excitement in the fact that, like, now at this point in her career, there is finally some competition and someone who is going to race her. And, we saw that beginning in Paris this year, Titmus and Paige Madden both made that a really interesting race for, I think, longer than at least I certainly expected them to, and Summer's on her Instagram saying that was my annual 800 freestyle was fun, and kind of, whether or not this is an event that she's actually going to take seriously at the international level, it's still really exciting to see, someone else break that mark and crack the top 10 800 freestyle performances of all time.
Let's stick with this summer 800 freestyle narrative for a minute, because it's a huge deal, right? She is historically the second fastest woman of all time. She's only 5 seconds away from Katie Ledecky's legendary world record in that event. Should she swim this at Worlds this summer? Certainly the fans want her to. Certainly everyone wants to see Katie and Summer swim this. But do you think it would be the right move for Summer to swim this 800 freestyle? Sorry, Brendan, what do you think?
Can you remind me, is there a conflict schedule if it was something she already swims? It's kind of tough. She's, however many golds she won last summer, and then she'd probably add 2 more onto it if she really wanted to.
Certainly, this past summer, it conflicted with the 200 IM. I don't exactly know the world champ schedule for this summer.
I'm pulling it up. Hold on.
Yeah, I want to get my facts straight before I have an opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and you can't, like, hindsight's 2020. Obviously, we can't fault her for skipping the 800 free this summer. She won the 200 IM. It obviously paid off in a gold medal. Either, and I'm not convinced she would have beat Katie in a head-to-head match at the Olympics, even though Summer looked quite on form. But it's a bit of a different animal there.
Okay. The women's 800 free, I don't believe it conflicts with anything that Summer would swim, unless she is now more interested in doing the 200 back. It's on day 7, and the other women's events that day are the women's 50 fly final, women's 2 back final, women's 50 breaststroke semis, women's 50 free semis, and then there's the mixed 4x1 as well. And her heat would have been the day before.
And we did see Summer McIntosh swim the 200 back at short course world championships in December. So could be a 4th event for her.
I mean, long course 200 back, I think it's a little too crowded right now with McEwen, with Reagan Smith, Kylie Moss is still elite in that event. But I think the 800, it just kind of depends if she wants to go all in, if she wants to kind of jump the gun a little bit. She's only going to continue reaching her prime versus Ledecky. She's been unbelievable for a decade plus, but she's not getting any younger. So I just kind of think it's not if, but when. If it's this summer, great. If it's coming down the pipeline, then I'll be excited to see that. But I'd love to see her swim at any point. And if she gets at least 1 or 2 races against Ledecky, I think that'd be great for the sport of swimming.
It really would. And I feel like not that Summer, and certainly not that Katie, owe the sport anything at this point, but come on. Like, just you could have done it at this meet, right? Like, people were saying, oh, Katie's trying to duck Summer and not swim, or vice versa, because Summer only swam the 800. Obviously, that was not the case. I think they just took opposite strategies for, like, doing this meet, while Summer, like, swam one event, maybe even swam on a relay, but then, like, dipped. And then Katie came on Saturday and Sunday, I think. Yeah.
People just invent narratives. I mean,
I think they do. And it would be really funny if it were actually true that they called each other and were like, hey, what days are you going to go? Okay, I'll go the other days. But, it's like, this would have been a perfect opportunity to give fans, like, it's February, there's nothing else going on, just race. Which, again, this is just the fan talking in me. But I mean, my favorite thing seeing this weekend was Katie Ledecky throwing down 2 401s in the 400 free. And as you just mentioned, Brendan, like, Katie is not getting any younger, but man, is she aging gracefully at this point. It's certainly in swimming, because she is just the picture of consistency at this point. Being able to do that in a February meet that has no stakes whatsoever. And, someone mentioned like that's almost what she went at the Olympics, right?
Mhm.
As well as throwing down a 15:36 mile, which is, I think someone just mentioned in the comments, now she owns the 21 fastest times in history in that event, which is crazy. But I personally don't think Summer McIntosh should add the 800 free to her event schedule, and or wants to. I understand how good she is at it, but I'm guessing she might have to change up her training a bit if it meant swimming an 800 free really well at the end of a 7-day meet, after she's already swam prelims, semis, finals of 3 other events, plus maybe a relay or 2. Like, that doesn't sound fun to me. I'm guessing that doesn't sound fun to her. Swimming the 800 free, timed 800 free at the beginning of a meet with like no stakes whatsoever, I'm guessing it's just a little different.
Versatility is a blessing and a curse.
Seriously. Sophie, your thoughts on this, on the summer 800 free narrative, and if she should try to compete in it this summer at Worlds?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously I would really like her to swim it. It would be such an exciting race. We already get to see her, Titmus and Ledecky go head to head in the 400, and that was already being billed as like the race of the century when they clashed at Worlds last 2 years ago now. Yikes.
23. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it would just be even more exciting and kind of add to that narrative and excitement level in terms of eyes on the sport. You'd certainly attract a lot of people. I agree that I don't know that it makes a ton of sense for her at this point in her career based on what she seems to be interested in swimming. She has so many events that she can swim, and like Brendan says, that's a blessing and a curse for her. She has to make these tough decisions, and it doesn't always come out the way that we as people sitting at home wanted to. It took us a long time to get to see her race the other 200 IM stars head to head. And so I hope that eventually, maybe she thinks that this is an event that she wants to take a little bit more seriously. But, she is 18? Like, she's got hopefully a long career ahead of her, and she'll have the time to, change her focus if that's what she wants to do.
I keep forgetting she's 18. It's nuts.
Exactly. we gotta start pushing narrative now. My ultra hot take: Summer McIntosh, Los Angeles 2028. She's gonna struggle a little bit to get the relay medals, but her individual performances, we're gonna see another Leon Phelps-esque performance out of Summer.
Would like, if she can do that, and I feel like now is the time in the quad to like chill and maybe
Make
like
ridiculous predictions about something 3 years in the future.
Well, that's the time for us to do that, certainly. But yes,
you have to get it on the record early so that when it pays off.
So I'm more correct than you.
You got
this.
Yeah. Exactly. I said it first. I feel like now is the time for Summer to like chill, explore with different events, whatever. But then, I mean, if she can rev up, and it certainly seems like something she's capable, right? Of she won 3 golds in, what's it called, Paris, as well as a silver.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's outside the realm of possibilities for her to win 4 or 5 individual gold medals. And if she did that, yeah, that's Phelpsian, that's Marchand-esque. But it certainly seems realistic. So it'd be cool. I don't think that if she's gonna do that, I don't think the 800 free is on the table though. Like I feel like she'd have to go for the 200 free at that point if she wants to go 5.
Certainly capable.
Certainly capable. Well, I guess we'll see where Molly O and Titmus stand in that event at that point as well. But all right, that's Florida. And I think that's good on that meet. I think the one other quick highlight for me was Bobby Fink swimming some off events, but also throwing down a 757 in the 800 free. So dude still got it. He's not going anywhere. Good to see some Florida Olympians getting wet in the long pool. But now let's go worldwide. Here you go, international fans. This one's for you. We had so many meets this past weekend. Brendan, I'm going to throw this one to you first. Favorite athlete you liked seeing compete this weekend? Favorite meet? What did you like that you saw from the long pool this past weekend?
I'm going to go over to Japan. I believe it was the Konami Open. Tokyo silver medalist Tomohiro Honda, 155 in the 200 fly in February. That's just kind of what they do over there. The Japanese, they're such an incredible swimming nation. Really great. They're traditionally focused on IM 200s of stroke. For whatever reason, February and January, they have their university championships, I believe. They have a few other kind of prominent national swim meets, and they just throw down every single year for forever. So that was really cool to see that tradition continue.
Yeah, something in the island water there, I guess. Yeah, I don't know, but 155 is no joke, especially for this time of the season. But Honda is quite a competitor, and we've seen him have great in-season swims before. Sophie, what did you like from the international waters that you saw?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with another island, but a little closer to us. I really was excited to see Oliver Morgan's 52.70 in the 71 at Bucks in the 100 back. 0.01 off his own British record that he set last year. Breaking the super suited record. The Brits have been looking for a 100 backstroker for a long time, and they have finally really have one. And it just seems like after breaking out last year, Morgan's just going to continue to get better. So that was really exciting to see him throw down that swim and to do it, at this time of year.
Do we think that Britain's medley relay can come back to prominence and, get back on a medal podium, specifically at a world champs or an Olympics, where, if they have a backstroker, I guess it sort of depends on Adam Peaty's status, but I think he's back training, right? Or at
He's
least
getting wet.
He's getting wet. He's getting in the pool. I think that's what we reported, but I am curious.
With a new coach.
With a new coach. But I think it's like he's at the pool where he trained with Mel Marshall before they moved to Loughborough, I think, right? Or he's in that town at least.
You have more information than I do.
I think that's what we reported. But could be interesting to see how that affects their the men's medley relay moving forward, as well as the mixed medley relay. Especially with another interesting swim was Angard Evans going 106.0 or 106 low in the 100 breast. So Britain's got some good female breaststrokers coming up the ranks as well, which could impact their mixed medley positively. There was also some I liked a lot of the other swims we saw at Bucks. James Guy is continuing to do it. He is also aging gracefully. 148 in the 2 free, his first 200 freestyle since the repeating as 4x200 Olympic champion. He also threw down a 350 in the 400 free, which was a little off his season best. He had been 348.9 just last month in January. And then Daniel Whiffen, another Olympic champion, threw down a 3:49 in the 400 free as well. So just some good swims all around at that meet. And then we go over to Dubai, where we saw the Dubai Open Swimming Championships. I'd never even heard of this meet, but the way that people attended it, you would have thought it was like a mainstay in the international swimming circuit. I didn't even know it was happening. I don't feel like we put out, maybe that's just because SwimSwam didn't preview it at all or talk about it. But we had Mary Sophie Harvey, Laura Van Niekerk, Ilya Shimanovic, Noe Ponti, Ben Proud, Duncan Scott, all winning events. Notably, Ben Proud, 21.99 in the 50 free, Noe Ponti, 22.8 in the 50 fly. Van Niekerk was 108.9 in the 100 breast. So some solid swims there, but I really just loved seeing the international crowd that this meet attracted. So any other notes from you guys on international swimming or long course races that you liked seeing this weekend? We got nothing.
I just think it's exciting that after getting to see Ponti like rip up the 50 fly short course rankings, he now gets to do the same in long course. You know, it would have sucked if he had to kind of put that away for another year, but we just get to roll right into world champs where the 50s are back.
Oof. Agreed. Yeah. And honestly, I'm not that excited about long course season or swimming. I love short course. I love yards. I love 25 meters too. But it is good seeing a lot of these athletes who have been fairly quiet, who took big breaks after the Olympics, who maybe we saw in the short course season, but we haven't seen compete in the last month or two. It's nice to see all these athletes' names pop up again and be like, oh yeah, they exist. So it's nice. I will say it's nice to get out of my American yards bubble for a little bit. So glad that we're seeing some long course racing. And with that, last little bit, Indiana shout out. The Carmel High School girls won their 39th state title in a row, which is incomprehensible to me. That's older. They've been winning state titles since before any of us were born. And Alex Shackle became the first person in Indiana state history to four-peat an individual event.
100 fly.
100 fly. Yeah. Brendan, as someone who once lived in Indiana, what did you think about seeing this swim, and also knowing that Alex Shackle is taking a gap year next year? What are your thoughts on her moving forward?
I think she's one of the bright young stars in USA Swimming. Her performance in Paris last year and Fukuoka the year before, I think, shows a lot of promise. Carmel, as someone that lived in the state, they're just kind of omnipresent. Everyone knows about them,
Mm-hmm.
Love them, hate them, in between. They're just kind of there. They just kind of do their thing. They've been one of the best club teams in the U.S. for 20, 30, 40 years. They finally got their first Olympians in 2021 with Jake Mitchell and Drew Kibler, and they repeated last time. We're getting the Shackle siblings and Drew Kibler on the team, and they just showed no signs of slowing down.
Yeah. Sophie, any thoughts on this accomplishment or on Shackle moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think this extends their streak of like the winningest high school team, not just in swimming, but for all of sports. This is the longest high school state championship win streak. So it's just incredibly impressive from them. I think it is in terms of like Shackle taking a gap year, right? Like as someone who's like fully in the mindset of like NCAA swimming at this point in the season, the first week of conference is about to start, and then NCAA's, like, it is a really exciting thought to get to see Alex like on the Cal roster, helping them. They've taken big steps this season, and having her on the roster would only help them. But as far as, what's next for her and like her long-term career, like it's working for her at Carmel. So, why make that change if you don't necessarily need to at this point?
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that we've seen several Carmel athletes now. Either we saw Kibler do 4 years at Texas and then end up going back and training at Carmel for a year before eventually ending up at ASU with Bob Bowman, leading into the Olympics. We saw Aaron Shackle go to Cal for a semester, come back to Carmel, go to Texas for a semester. Now he's back at Carmel as well. So it's interesting to see a lot of athletes. Wyatt Davis spent time back at Carmel between stints at Michigan. It's interesting to just see a lot of athletes gravitating back to that program. And yeah, I think their results kind of speak for themselves. Put 3 on the Olympic team this year, put a couple on in 21. So they are doing something right. And if Alex thinks this is the best move for her, then who are we to say otherwise? But winning 4 state titles in a row is extremely impressive. Again, she's the first person to ever do that in Indiana. And next year there will be going for 40 state titles in a row, which is, yeah, incomprehensible to me. It's longer than many sports fans are a fan of their sport. So go Carmel, go Alex Shackle. Good for you guys. And on that note, let's do a few sink or swims before we jump off of this breakdown. So first up today on sink or swim, Brooks Curry is on the ACC psych sheets. Once again, something I thought I'd never say. He is entered for Cal. He has not competed for Cal at all this season, but he is competing for them at the ACC Championships and assumably at the NCAA Championships if he qualifies. I'm really curious to see just the kind of times he's going to put up, because we actually haven't seen him swim short course since 2023. And so we don't even, and that season, I don't believe he went best times, at least not in the 50 and 100 freestyle. He won both of those events at NCAAs in his junior season, so 2022. So I'm really curious just to see what he does at this meet and how his times look. He did qualify for the Olympic team this past summer in the 200 freestyle as a member of the 4x200 free relay. All that to say, sink or swim, does Brooks Curry put Cal over the top for an NCAA championship run? Sophie, what do you think?
I think it's hard to say without seeing what he's actually going to put up. We haven't seen him swim short course yards in 2 years, and we just don't know what he's going to do. Cal is not necessarily lacking sprinters. They've got a fine group without Curry, and it's just kind of what he's going to bring to, how many A finals can he get in? Does he add anything to their relays that they don't already have? His best time in the 200 free is 1:31. And so the answer there is yes. We've been talking for weeks now about whether Chris Giuliano should be on Texas's 800 free relay. And if Curry is at NCAA's and on that relay, Giuliano has to be on Texas's if they want to win that. So I think it does make them, if he swims and puts up the kind of times that are, near his lifetime best that we think that he's capable of putting up, or is even going best times, then I think it makes them very dangerous. We've been talking, I think, at least in the SwimSwam rankings this whole season, it's been kind of about Texas and Indiana, with Cal sitting third, but this would boost their profile in a really big way. You're looking at somebody who potentially can make 3A finals, and that could be it. That could be the difference this year.
I didn't hear a sink or a swim.
That's so true. I was hoping that you would not notice. I'm gonna sink it. I don't think it is necessarily gonna give them the piece they need to get. They might be the runners up, but I don't know if it's gonna do what they needed to do to get number one.
Fair enough. Yeah, Brendan.
I'm gonna sink it. I think he, like Sophie said, it's it really depends on what he's able to do at ACCs and then most likely NCAAs. If he's on his best form, if he goes best times, then it might be the end for Texas and IU. However, I will say his addition to Cal. Are you guys ready for a sub 6 minute 800 free relay at NCAAs between Texas or Cal? Like, have you guys wrapped your head around that for a second?
I think I've been hoping for it, but I haven't actually stopped to think about what that world looks like.
That's really not ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, I'd really put that 6 minute barrier up there with a lot of the kind of once unthinkable barriers of swimming. Not so long ago, 3 minutes in the 400 medley relay, 18 seconds in the 50 freestyle, 40 seconds in the 100 freestyle, 130 in the 200 freestyle. Those have been broken, and now this is really one of the last, I guess, nice round numbers that we get to break. I mean, those guys that are going to be on those 800 free relays for specifically Cal and Texas, I think they're just going to bring out the best in each other. And I think it's going to be one of the best relay races we've ever seen at the NCAA Championships. So I'll swim that. I'll swim a sub 6 minute 800 free relay. And I think they're going to win by 8 or 9 seconds. I don't think there's a third team that can sniff them.
Yeah. That is a hot take.
I don't think it's that hot. I get it, but it's a big scary number that we just have to live with.
I will say that when it comes to a sub 6 minute 800 free relay, I think that's too mind numbing. It's like Leon swimming a 428, it's 328, 400. It's so fast. I can't really wrap my head around it, and it might take years for me to actually process it, because I think when we saw the first 129, everyone was like, "Oh man, this is nuts." Okay. Blake P. Yeah, that was a huge deal, but then to have 4 guys average that, again, it's 4 times the processing for my brain. And so I don't
if you put Brooks Curry's flat start best time with Gabe Jett's flat start, who else? Destin's 129 relay split and Jack Alexi's flat start 129. They're at 6 minutes 0.9. And without factoring in the exchange.
I wonder if they'll put Hinvo on that relay as well. I wonder if he has the speed to contribute meaningfully enough so that they can put him on there and they don't have to use someone else like a Destin or a Gabe who they might put on another relay, or a Jack Alexi. But then also, if he's on there, would that ruin the sub 6 minute dream?
He's getting 132.1 this season.
Yeah, I feel like he's really evolved as an athlete since the last time he was on this Cal roster, and so it wouldn't surprise me if they do. Maybe we'll see a preview of this week at ACCs. Anyway, I'm very excited. We can talk about sub 6 minutes maybe another time as well. I'm swimming this for Cal. I do think Brooks, as well as Lucas Hinvo and Miwin Tomac, I think Cal is over the hump now. As you mentioned, Sophie, we weren't talking about them in the conversation as much because it was more of a Cal and Texas and Indiana discussion as it was on paper. But between the 3 of them, you add 6 more A finals minimum, I think, to a scoring sheet, plus another few bodies that you can throw on relays in a meaningful way. I think that puts them over the top for me in my mind. Like I think that makes them the favorites, certainly. So I am swimming that. It's not by much, and I really hope we get a good team battle. But if I'm betting on someone now, it's Cal. All right. Next up on Sink or Swim. Just which conference meet are you swimming this week as your most anticipated conference meet? ACCs, SECs, or women's Big Tens? Who's getting a swim from you, Sophie?
I think for me, it's SECs. I think that meet has just been so consistently fast for so long. You know, the teams really get into it. It's high energy, high pace. I mean, for a long time, it's a long meet. But the teams really deliver year in, year out. I'm really excited to see. I'm hoping that the addition of Texas, you know, they're coming in as heavy favorites, I feel like, on the men's and the women's side, but I'm hoping that that just inspires all the other teams to rise to the challenge that they are offering. And I'm hoping, you know, I'm just hoping that it'll be a really fast meet and maybe another sub 18-second 50 freestyle.
That's crazy. Brendan?
I'm going to say SECs as well by a pretty considerable margin. ACCs, I think, will produce a lot of really great individual swims. You know, the newcomers with Cal and Stanford, both two really high-profile teams added to a conference that's already really ridiculously deep. They're going to have 6, 7, 8, 9 teams on both the men's and the women's side being the top 25. So you add 2 more high-profile programs from California on top of that. Individually, it'll be a great meet, but the SEC team battles are just anything you could ever hope for. Florida has had a stranglehold on the conference on the women's side for the past 2 years. For the men's side, they've had a stranglehold since the Obama administration. So this year, Texas kind of walks in, and they're looking like the favorites, pretty honestly. But Florida will be ready to go. They're always ready to go for this meet. I think it's just going to be a really great battle in Athens, Georgia.
Are you going to women's Big Tens?
I'm going to women's Big Tens. I mean, IU's winning that one. Come on. That'll be great. I'm really, you know what, swim, I'm excited to see my sister swim this week. That's number one priority. So
yeah. All right. I appreciate your professionalism, and I also appreciate your sportsmanship for going to see your sister swim. That's awesome. I'm swimming ACCs for one reason only. I'm going. So I think ACCs and SECs is kind of tied in my mind in terms of just the excitement that the meet could generate and the storylines. So the fact that I'm going to ACCs puts it over the top for me. There's going to be so many high level athletes there, so many interviews to be had there, and so many storylines to report on there, including Stanford women leaving early. So I will be on the ground, microphone in hand, and I'm very excited. I've never been to ACCs. I've been to SECs. That meets nuts. And I think it'll be a really great iteration of it this year, especially with the addition of Texas. Excited to see what ACCs is all about. So that one gets my swim. And that is our SwimSwam breakdown for the day. Thank you again for tuning in, and we will see you next